It's Brunchin with Marinaro on this Sunday, June 5th. Does one of the top picks have a problem with his intensity? Why is he number one if he is number one? Are the Habs interested in the other guy? Or how about the other guy that no one's talking about, seeing as they went out of their way to go to dinner with him? One player offers up a comparable on who he thinks he'll be when he makes it to the National Hockey League. And is he willing to go to Europe? All this and much more. I'm going solo. I'm Marinaro.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro. The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
And now a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Sports entertainment like no other. Brought to you by 8.6 Beer. Intense by nature.
Marinaro, it's the Sick Podcast, and I'm going solo. And hold on, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take to my phone right away, and I'm going to go to the Sick Podcast, and I would advise you to do the same. You can follow us on Twitter at the Sick Podcasts. Okay, that's what it looks like right there, the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro. Do you see it? Yeah, I think you see it. All right, okay, so we are live right there. So what I'm going to do is I will retweet to let everyone know, and then another thing that you should do is you should go to your Facebook, and you should go to the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro, okay? And the page looks like this, all right? And you should follow us there, and you should share what we're doing right now with all of your friends, all right? Because sharing is caring, and you can follow us on, once again, on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter at the Sick Podcast, and you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's absolutely free. Remember last week when I said, we're going to do this and we're going to do it together. I'm going to need all of you to be able to take this podcast to the next level. By the way, as of last week, this podcast was rated the third highest podcast, hockey podcast in Canada. Number 3, this small little podcast wants to get bigger. And we've got this far because of all of you. And we're going to go even further with all your support. So thank you very much. Good Sunday morning, and congratulations are in order to Carey Price, who was awarded the Bill Masterton Memorial Trophy, which is awarded annually to the National Hockey League player who best exemplifies, the qualities of perseverance and sportsmanship and dedication to ice hockey. So Carey Price, congratulations. Carey Price, of course, is always the center of attention in Montreal, and people are talking about him. And I gave you my opinion a little while ago. I wouldn't bet the house, but if you had to ask me if I think he's going to continue to play or not, I don't think he will. But I don't have that on any information. It's just, putting all the pieces together. He tried to come back. It was difficult. When he did come back, he was a shadow of himself. He had his agent, his father, his wife, his kids in attendance at the final game of the season, of the regular season, when they beat Florida by a score of 10-2. He waved to them with a couple of minutes left in the game. He didn't like what he had to hear from his doctor. He had to go for a second opinion. Went first to his doctor in New York, and then went to see a specialist in Pittsburgh. And, he said that he would want to stick around until he was, unless he was a burden to the team. And if he was a burden to the team, then he would move on. And if he could do it physically, and if he can play at a level that he was comfortable with. So add it all up, I think he's going to retire. But listen, for him to get over all the obstacles he got over the course of his career, obviously he's a gamer and obviously is a winner. So it wouldn't surprise me if he's able to come back. All right. But that's just my gut. All right. Brunchin with Marinaro is brought to you by 8.6 Beer. These guys right over here, the beer for those who follow their instinct and live their passions in order to make their mark. And it's my kind of beer because I follow my instincts all the time. I think you would agree. All right, okay. So what we do on this show is we get to some Habs topics for the most part, and we get to your questions. So throw them out there, send a question, and I'll try my best to answer it. You can pretty much ask me whatever you want, and I'll try and answer it to the best of my ability. All right, we're good. If you really love the podcast, comment SICK, S-I-C-K, and then our people behind the scenes and people at Master Control and all that stuff will know that you really love the podcast, and they're going to tell me, Tony, people really love the podcast, which is always good to know. All right, okay. This past week was the Combine in Buffalo for the 2022 draft-eligible players. Of course, the number one pick, Shane Wright, was there. Of course, the other centerman, Logan Cooley of the U.S. National Development Program, he was there too. Juraj Slafkovsky was there, but didn't take part in the physicals because, of course, he just, he had a very, very long World Hockey Championships with Slovakia, so he chose not to take part in the physicals, but he was there to answer questions. One of the big questions over the last little while, and Mathias Brunet of La Presse newspaper referenced this, is Shane Wright's lack of intensity. Shane Wright's playoffs, he picked up points, something like 14 points in 12 games, whatever it was, but a lot of people questioned his intensity to the point where some people thought that he was actually the worst player on the ice in one game, and it didn't look like he was trying in a couple of games. So at the Combine interviews, Shane Wright was asked about his intensity. Listen to this and let's hear what he had to say.
Hi, Shane. We heard that Montreal were challenging a lot of the players this week. Some of the flaws in your game is maybe in the level of engagement, the intensity in your game sometimes. Was that a question with Montreal, and what was your answer to that?
Yeah, it was definitely a question. I mean, I think a lot of teams asked that. A lot of teams, kind of came up in the interviews that I faced, and I just said, sometimes maybe you don't have your competing nights. I think sometimes maybe it looks like I'm not competing, maybe it looks like I'm not skating, but I think a lot, with the way I play and the way my game is, I'm not skating 100% of the time, 100% power, full out on the ice. I'm kind of I'm more methodical with the way I play. I'm thinking the game ahead. I'm trying to read where the puck's going rather than skating into areas, getting into bad ice. So I guess sometimes it can be perceived that I am not competing hard, but I think that I'm reading the play, I'm understanding and trying to think ahead of the play a little bit more.
Okay, so listen, I understand the answer, and by the way, it's a great answer. If I was interviewing him and that's the answer he gave me, I'd be impressed by that. Having said all that, he's playing a very methodical game. He's thinking the game. He's being one step ahead. He's not going to where the puck is, but he's going to where the puck's going to go. Wayne Gretzky did that. Patrice Bergeron did that and does that. Sidney Crosby does that. I'm just giving you a couple of names here. Did you ever hear anyone question their engagement or their intensity? Never. So it's a great answer, but it's a concern. Now, he came out and said that based on everything he accomplished, he's number one. They asked him to elaborate. Why are you number one, Shane? This is what he had to say.
First player in your situation wants to go first. And you've come out, I believe, on TSN and said, I think I deserve to go first based on what I've done, based on how hard I worked. What gives you that confidence? And when we relayed that comment to Yuri, he said, well, he's got his ideas and I've got my own. So what do you think separates you to be the first in this class?
Yeah, I'm a competitive guy. I always want to be first. I always want to be the best. I think no matter what position you're in, no matter where you're ranked, I think it's always your goal, always your You always want to be first. You want to be that first guy chosen. And that's always been my mindset. That's always been my attitude throughout this entire year and throughout my entire life as well. I always want to be the best. So, I think, at the end of the day, it's out of my control now, but, I guess I have my own opinion as well on the draft, but, you're competitive. You want to be that first guy picked, and that's definitely, the way I feel as well.
All right. So he's competitive. He wants to be the first guy. He wants to be the best, but he didn't tell us why he's number one. So you said that you should be the number one pick. Why do you think you should be the number one? I mean, people with confidence, drive, they all want to be number one. Some believe they are number one. I believe I'm number one. Why? Because of my ability to inform and entertain. Because of my ability to rile up a crowd. Because of my ability to make people go nuts. My ability to have people love me or hate me. My ability to put on a show. Add that all together, my ability to drive ratings. Take a look at my social media numbers. Compare them to others who do what I do. Take a look at my videos. Take a look at my views. Take a look at the ratings. That's how I would answer that question if I were to be asked, why do you believe you're number one? I think I just stated all facts. And I say it humbly, eh? Trust me when I tell you that. Because I'm not content yet. And but I say it humbly. He was asked why he believes he's number one. And his answer is, you always want to be number one. Yeah. You always want to be the best. Yeah. It's important to you because of that. Yeah. But why are you number one, Shane? And I'm not doing this to pick on the guy, okay? It's just he didn't have an answer for it. I'd love to get the opportunity to talk to him, by the way. And I'm going to tell you right now that it's going to happen. All right? In due time. At the right time. But, it would be great if he would say, take a look at my shot. How many people have a shot like I do? Take a look at my IQ. How many people have an IQ like I do? Take a look at my ability to carry a team on my shoulders. Take a look at my ability to lead. Take a look at my leadership skills. Take a look at my character. This, that. Talk to anyone who's coached me. Talk to anyone who's coached against me. Whether it be in the CHL or whether it be with Hockey Canada. Take a look at my ability to elevate. Give examples of games, give examples of shifts, give examples of goals. That's what I would have done. Anyway. On the other hand, there's Juraj Slafkovsky, the Slovakian winger that is starting to gain a lot of momentum in the talks here. Can he end up being the Montreal Canadiens' number one pick? He was asked about Montreal's possible interest in him. Listen to this answer. Had everyone laughing.
With all the time that you spent with Montreal this week, how much do you think they have a real interest in you as the number one pick?
I think they were interested, and I think that's what their job interview 4-5 players, and yeah. I didn't have the dinner, but I think that talk we had was maybe to me it tasted better than dinner. Yeah.
All right, there you had it. We didn't have a dinner, but the talk that we had tasted better than the dinner. And now you don't have dinner with somebody. There's two ways that can go, right? Number one, you have such a great talk with him, you feel like you don't have to take him to dinner. Number two, you had a good talk with him, but he's not going to be your guy, so you don't need to know more, and you're not going to take him to dinner. Which one is it? What we do know is that his development over the last 6 months has really been growing. So he was asked, what do you attribute your development growth to? That's what he had to say.
What do you credit the improvement and the development that you've made over the past year to go from where you were maybe a year ago to what you did at the Olympics to what you've done at the World Championships? What do you credit that growth to?
I think it was a lot of about the confidence at the end of the day, because I knew I can play hockey already before, but I just didn't show it. And for example, at the Olympics, my confidence was pretty high, so I think it was more about that. I needed to trust myself more and just try those things what I did.
How confident are you now?
Yeah, pretty confident.
All right. More on Juraj Slafkovsky a little bit later, because he really gave us some candy in some of those interviews. I'm going to get to the questions, and you can send them in right now, comment, and I'm going to try and read them. By the way, what do you think of my Lafleur chair? Can we just go back to Quinn? Look at that, huh? Hold on a second. Why don't I do this? Hold on a second. Why don't I do this? I know what I'm going to do. Let me just get ready here. Let me show it to you. What do you think of that, baby, huh? Is that nice? Or is that nice? There you go. Let me just put it back. All right. The beauty of doing a live podcast. And now it's not in there. Hold on. There we go. There we go. Got to get it in there. Guy Lafleur, Flower, Hall of Fame, 1988, 5 cups with the number 10 on it. And that is C12 of 50. Special thanks to my buddy Mike Moretto and his lovely Deborah Cross for giving me that as a gift last week. And with a note that said, the number one sportscaster in the city needs to sit in the chair of a champion. And they told me that was my early 50th birthday gift. My birthday, I had a bunch of people wishing me happy birthday. My birthday is going to be November 23rd, by the way. But based on the emotions of the last week and my love for Guy Lafleur, they just thought that it was fitting that I would have that gift right away. So thank you very much. I found a spot for it here in my podcast room, and at one point maybe I'm going to actually elevate it, and we're gonna raise it a little bit more, and you'll actually see it more in that top corner there, right over there, wherever. Hold on a second, right there, yeah, probably up there. So you're going to see it over there. It's going to be nicer. All right, back to the questions. What do you think of the defensive prospect pool for the Canadiens? Should we be adding on defense or looking to get these young guys into the lineup? All right, so goalie, Harris, Barron, Mayu, Romanov, who's already in the lineup, of course, Schuneman, who's not that young. He's like 26. But there's a lot of prospects on defense for sure. Not so sure about Matthias Norlinder. We'll see. But I would get some of these guys in the lineup. I would ice a very young and inexperienced team. And chances are they're going to lose more than they're going to win. And I want to put myself in a position where I have a top 3 or 4 pick in the draft next year, because all teams that go far in the playoffs, they end up picking first, second, third, fourth, at least a couple of years. I don't think the Canadiens are going to turn around by just having the number 1 pick in the draft in a draft year that is, with each passing day, less and less unanimous. All right. So that's what I would do. Next question. Could Caden Primo still be a future goalie for the Habs, seeing how much he has improved his game? I think COVID-19 and frequent call-ups to the Habs have placed unnecessary pressures on him. My answer to that is yes. This coming in from Sammy. Thank you, Sammy. I appreciate your question. I am the president of the Caden Primo fan club. I did not throw in the towel on him. He's played excellent hockey throughout the AHL playoffs. The Laval Rocket lost their first game yesterday, but Caden Primo's been really good. And I think he can be not only an NHL goalie, I think he can be a number one goalie. How great? That I don't know. I am no goalie expert. I am good looking, though. Next. MJV. Tony, Kent Hughes said he's not signing Mailloux to a contract this year. Do you think that means he'll be traded? I'm 50-50 on this one. I've never been 50-50 on something before. I wouldn't trade him. Just my opinion. I'm taking a look from a hockey perspective. Hockey. I'm not looking at anything else. Okay? Hockey. Hockey perspective. He's big. He's strong. He's got a cannon of a shot. He can quarterback a power play. He has a high ceiling. From a hockey perspective, I wouldn't trade him. And for those who are looking on a moral point of view, saying they have to get rid of him, they should have never drafted him in the first place. Once the Canadiens made the decision to draft this player, and obviously there's a lot of room for growth for him, the Canadiens can help him with change. They can help him to change. They can help him grow. Is it a good thing if they give up on him and send him somewhere else instead of actually working with him to make him a better, more responsible person? If I'm the Canadiens, I'm not looking to trade him. But of course, everyone is tradable in hockey. Next. Peter McDowell. Hey, Tony, do you think we have enough physicality in the current squad, especially the forwards? I do not. And those who have the biggest bodies and are the most physical, unfortunately, probably are the most inconsistent players on the team. Next. Matthew Jarvis. Happy 6th Sunday, Tony. Would you be horribly disappointed if the Habs chose Slafkovsky or Cooley over Wright? I have a lot of confidence in this management team, in the double-headed monster that is Jeff Gordon and Kent Hughes, and I think they're going to make the right choice. Having said that, Shane Wright has been like the number one pick, the consensus number one pick, going back like 4 years or whatever. People thought in 2022 he would be the number one pick. It takes some courage not to make him the number one pick. But if the Canadiens believe that Slafkovsky's the better player, do you end up drafting the centerman over the guy that you think is the better player? You know, the last time the Canadiens did that, they chose Kotkaniemi over Tkachuk, and the time before they did that, they chose Galchenyuk over Forsberg, or Galchenyuk even over Morgan Riley, who was a defenseman. The list goes on and on. But, you know, if they draft Shane Wright, are they drafting him because they believe he's the best player, or are they drafting him because he's always been the best player and he's a centerman, and a centerman has more value than Slafkovsky? Or actually on the flip side, or if they draft Slafkovsky, are they drafting him because they think he has a better ceiling than the other guy? Because the last time they did that, it was also Kotkaniemi. They not only chose Kotkaniemi because he was a centerman over Tkachuk, they also chose him because they thought he had a higher ceiling, instead of going with the player that was probably better right away. I have confidence in the management team, and I think in the end they're going to get it right. By the way, I talked to you about the Canadiens being interested in the second pick, or I would be interested in the second pick. I can actually guarantee you that the Canadiens are interested in getting New Jersey's second pick. I can tell you that for a fact, okay? I could also tell you that they're just interested in, if they don't get the second pick, getting another pick in the top 10 in the draft. Should be noted, the Canadiens have the first pick, pick 26, and pick 33. Will they trade 26 and 33 and maybe something else for a top 10 pick? We'll find out on Thursday, July 7th. the night of the 2022 NHL Amateur Draft, which will take place at the Bell Center. Next, Christopher Brandy. Do you think the Canadiens bring in Braden Holtby, Marc-Andre Fleury, someone like that to split double duty with Jake Allen? I do not. I do think that if Carey Price retires, they will bring in another goalie, maybe, or else they might just go with Jake Allen and Samuel Montembeault for another year. What's the worst that could happen? They lose more than they win? I think that's a victory in itself. The king of the rebuild, or the president of the rebuild fan club. All right, okay, where are we going? Fred Sartor. Tony, would you add a legit enforcer to the fourth line to protect the youngsters? He has to know how to play, but yes, I would. The last thing you want is your young players that are here, that are trying to grow and develop, get beat up and get manhandled. You don't want that. If you don't add an enforcer, you need to have that wolf pack mentality. They don't have that yet either. Next. Darcy Barnes. So, Tony, are you doubting Wright because he did not address his reasoning for being number one when he was addressed his reasoning in other interviews? No. All I said was I would have liked to have heard in the combine interview why he thought he was number one and all the reasons why. That's all I said. I'm not doubting anybody. Next. Hendricks. Wouldn't it be good to use Mailloux to trade for that number 2 pick overall, get Wright and Slafkovsky? He wrote it Slafkovsky. Look at that. Bring it back up. He wrote it Slafkovsky. I hope if the Canadiens draft him, you don't write it that way on your jersey. It would take more than Logan Mailloux to get the number 2 pick overall. Speaking of which, if you want to know, why don't we do this? Since we're asked about Slafkovsky, he was asked, do you think you're an impact player? If not, what's missing? Let's hear from him.
What do you think you have to do to become an impact NHL player?
Yeah, just work on everything overall, like get better my shoot skating and get it to another level, and then I think I can be an impact player.
There you have it. He was also asked, who do you compare yourself to?
Is there a player that you think best represents the kind of player you are, somebody who really shows the kind of same player you are?
I think it would be Mikko Rantanen, in my opinion.
Why Mikko? You're right.
So he's like kind of pretty same, like tall as me, and like maybe same style. He drives the net, he can protect the puck well, and that's what I try to do also.
All right, there you have it. His comparable is Mikko Rantanen. Are you aware of him? You should be. He plays with Nathan McKinnon in Colorado. Let's take a look at his chart on hockeydb.com. All right, so there you have it. Mikko Rantanen, drafted 10th overall in the 2015 NHL draft by the Colorado Avalanche. He's 6'4", 215 pounds, left shot, can play either wing, has had seasons of 20, 29, 31, 19 and 42, 30 and 52, and this past season, 36 goals in 75 games. He's had seasons of 84, 87, and this past season, 92 points. And yes, he plays with one of the best players in the National Hockey League. There's no doubt. Let's take a look at that draft. McDavid went 1. Eichel went 2. Strome 3. Marner 4. Hanifin 5. Zaka 6. Provorov 7. Werenski 8. Timo Meier 9. Rantanen, Krause, Gurianov, Zboril, DeBrusk, Senishin, Matthew Barzal, Kyle Connor, Thomas Chabot. Think about this. How many guys in that draft are better than Mikko Rantanen? Like if you're saying, okay, he compares himself to Rantanen, but Rantanen was a 10th pick overall. How many guys in that draft would you take over Mikko Rantanen? McDavid, okay. Possibly Barzal, Mitch Marner, Jack Eichel. You can have this debate, but Mikko Rantanen could very well have been, a top 5 pick in that draft. Is that good enough for you? And by the way, Logan Cooley, here's a guy that no one's talking about right now. The other best centerman in the draft, 5'10", little on the smaller side than Shane Wright, that's just over 6 feet. Is there any chance he could be the Canadiens guy? Well, Kent Hughes took Logan Cooley to dinner. And maybe that dinner was to find out a little bit more about him. Mind you, he knows him a little bit because his son played with him. Or maybe it was to say, I have so much respect for you, love you, this, that, whatever, blah, blah, blah. He probably told him what he wants to do or doesn't want to do. Something to think of. Wright, Slafkovsky, Cooley. Who's it going to be? We'll find out at the very latest on July 7th. Kent Hughes might actually even tell us before then. Back to the questions. Canadian 14 says, if they did get the second pick, I would rather Cooley or Nemec over Slafkovsky. Nemec is a defenseman. I wouldn't. If you get the number 1 pick and the number 2 pick, for me, it's easy. You draft a centerman and you draft a winger. And if that winger, Slafkovsky, can come in and complete the line with Suzuki and Caulfield right away, imagine when they end up becoming a very winning team, a very competitive team, 2 or 3 years down the line with 2 or 3 years under their belt. Imagine the chemistry they're going to have. Would be unbelievable. Next. What are the odds that our first overall and young D-men mainly play in Laval or below so that we organically tank another year? Well, I think that if your young D-men play with the Habs, you probably have a better chance of organically tanking because with less experience than an experienced defenseman, chances are they're going to make more mistakes. But if Shane Wright is the Canadiens' number 1 pick, I wouldn't play him. I wouldn't have him with the Canadiens for the upcoming season. I would not. There's a couple of options that you can do if he's not in the National Hockey League, but I wouldn't put him in the NHL. I wouldn't. Next. Only played 2 years of junior hockey and was good, but finished 8th in scoring in the regular season and was not dominant in the playoffs. Matthew Jarvis is Cole Caulfield, 22-23 season, plus or minus 40 goals. I will go under for now because we still don't know who that other winger is going to be on the other line. But I believe he'll get over 35. Or he'll hit 35, put it that way. Next. Jeff Boisvert. Tony, who do you think will be the best player between Alexis Lafreniere or Shane Wright? I think Shane Wright will end up being a more complete player. I think he'll be a more complete player. I think Lafreniere will probably score more goals. Next. But projections are the hardest thing to do in sport. Michael, what's up, Tony? Should Hughes draft the best available goalie in this year's draft? Keep doing what you're doing. We love you. Thank you, Michael. Or Michelle, pardon me, c'est Michelle. Michelle, I don't think they're going to use any of their first-round picks to draft a goalie. I don't think so, but we'll see. Next. Dan Desjardins. Tony, you think Petrie will be traded? Yes. And what about Weber and Price? I think Petrie will be traded. I think the Weber contract will be traded. And if I were a bet, not even a bet, my gut tells me that Price will retire. But if he doesn't, I wouldn't be surprised. Next. Vince Polifroni. Will Drouin start the season as a Hab? I'm not sure, but I know he won't end it as a Hab. At the very latest, trade deadline, they'll trade him. There's no way they're going to sign Jonathan Drouin to an extension. I, for one, would be shocked. Next. He doesn't fit in with, the culture that they're trying to, very competitive and all that stuff. Not that he's not competitive, but, they want you to be the most competitive, the hardest working, and I don't see it. Mike Metzloff. Tony, who is captain in 5 years from now? Suzuki. Next. Philip DePaulo. I'm a huge fan of yours. Thank you. I wanted to ask you your thoughts on the chances of drafting number 1 for 2 years in a row. Imagine drafting Wright and Connor Bedard. In my world, I'd love that. I would ice not a great team, and organically the team would lose. That's what I would do. Next. Yanni, who will have a better career, Suzuki or Wright? Oh, my God. Shane Wright should. He's been talked about as being the number 1 pick in the draft ever since he was like 14 years old or whatever it was. Nick Suzuki was drafted 13th by Vegas or whatever it was. Shane Wright should. But not every player that should have a better career ends up having a better career than someone who was drafted later than them, whether it's the same year or another year. Case in point, Alexandre Daigle. And there were others, by the way, not just him. Patrick Stefan, the list goes on and on. Neil Yakupov. The player that goes first overall is not always, or doesn't always have a better career than someone that's drafted later. But, more often than not, the first pick overall or the second pick overall in a draft does end up having a better career. Next. Michel Le Breton. Tony, you the man. What to do with Armia? Can the Habs move him? I would have Armia wear a Finland jersey underneath his Canadian jersey, because every time he puts one on, he looks pretty good for Finland and looks like he could be dominant. It's a little bit of a joke, but it's half serious too. Next. Mark Pausiak. Hey, Tony, sick podcast. Would you sign Romanov for 8 years at $3.5 million per? Yes, I would. Next. Andrew Chevrier. Good morning. I've been getting into vintage Canadiens hockey cards lately, 50s, 60s, 70s. Do you have any interesting vintage Habs cards? Oh, and sick. Thank you. Habs cards? I don't. I have a couple of, I used to collect cards like everyone else that grew up in Canada. And I used to have my cards inside a shoebox. And my mother thought they were taking up too much room, so she threw them in the garbage. Love you anyway, Ma. But I probably had like 15 Wayne Gretzky rookie cards, and I would have been able to retire by now. Or almost. I think I have Marty Berdeur's rookie card. And I think I have several Jaromir Jagr rookie cards. But I don't have any Habs rookie cards. But I did think of it, like I was thinking about this a couple of weeks back or a couple of months ago. And I want to get Guy Lafleur's. Next. Danny. Tony, why Montreal didn't keep Hammond? Well, because he's 34 years old. He wasn't going to have a future here. His contract was up at the end of the year. They were able to get a player that they could put in Laval. And Samuel Montembeault deserved to be the number 2 in the organization. Next. For now. Mark Chignita, as president of the Caden Primo fan club, what do you think his ceiling is? I'm going to conservatively say he's a player, he's a goalie that I think can put up 50 games per season, 250 goals against average, .915 save percentage. And if he does more than that, I'd be very happy. And if he does less than that, he wasn't expected to do great. He was drafted in the 7th round, 199th overall. Next. MC. Hi, Tony. Blue Jackets offer you Dubois and their first pick at 12, against your number 1 pick and your 26, do you make that trade? Oof. Don't Columbus have the 6th pick in the draft, too? If they offer Pierre-Luc Dubois their 6th and their 12th, it's something to really think about, if not due for most. But then again, if you add Pierre-Luc Dubois, you become immediately better right away, which is what a lot of people want to do. If you add a Shane Wright, for example, if that's going to be your guy, and he doesn't play on your team, you don't become better. And you probably end up getting the number 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 pick next year in the draft. So would you rather have Pierre-Luc Dubois at the salary he makes for X amount of years, or the number 1 pick in the draft, or 2 pick in the draft, or 3 pick in the draft, or 4 or 5 next year, and you can have them for 10 years? Think about it. Next. Sean Perry, listening from Uzbekistan. Is this coming year's Paling's last kick of the can with the Habs, or will he carve out a role as a winger? He better carve out a role, because if he doesn't, I think it will be his last year if we don't see that progression. 4 more minutes on Brunchin with Marinaro. Next. Mike. Hey, Tony, big fan. Who do you bring in as a free agent to lead the kids, since Weber, Price, and Sherratt aren't around the team? We can add Perry to the list since we didn't replace him. You want to bring in someone to show the kids the way? Bring in someone who's been in the National Hockey League 7 or 8 plus years, makes about $3 million, $4 million, not more than that, is a good player, but not a great player, but is character and is a leader. You don't want this team to pick up too many points in the standings either. And you don't want a long contract that's going to handcuff you against the cap going forward. Next. Alfredo Borello. Trade Petrie half salary. They're 2 late first-round picks this year and second-round pick next year for New Jersey's 2nd overall pick this year. Do you think New Jersey will accept it? No. Why would New Jersey want Jeff Petrie, who's going to turn 35 in December? They're a rebuilding team, too. They're a young team. I mean, if they add Jeff Petrie, are they going to make the playoffs? No. So why would the Devils do it? I don't think the Devils make that trade. Next. Marco Monaco. Hey, Tony, you think Joshua Roy will be plugged into the Laval Rockets lineup for the playoffs? Love to see what he can do. I'd love to see what he can do as well. He's available to them. Next. Andrew, sick podcast. Tony, my wife is not thrilled that you have this podcast on Sunday mornings. Long live the sick podcast. How do I answer that? How do I answer that? Your wife is not thrilled the podcast is on Sunday mornings. My apologies to your wife. But what you should do is say to your wife, let's compromise. I watch the Sick podcast on Sunday mornings. And then we go here, we go there, we go everywhere, we do this. I help out around that. I don't know. But we're here for now. And I think you might see us more regularly. Next. Sean Weir, do you think Shea Weber retires at the draft when the Habs get Shane Wright? Does he retire? I don't know. They'll trade his contract. Next. Eric Duceppe, sick. If Kevin Fiala becomes available in Minnesota, do you think he'll be a good fit for Montreal? It looks like he will be, and he'd be a good fit for anybody. He's a good player. Next. 2 more. This one, and the next one's going to be our last one. Hi, Tony. If Montreal and New Jersey can make a deal, what can Montreal offer for the 2nd pick overall? What can they offer for the 2nd pick overall? You'd have to think it would be one of their young defensemen. You'd have to think it'd probably be another prospect. or maybe a player from their team right away. Maybe New Jersey would want a Josh Anderson. Maybe they would want a Romanov. I'm not sure. You'd have to ask the Devils. The next one is the last one. Sim Liga forwards taken in the top 5 usually disappoint. Laine, Puljujarvi, Kakko, and Kotkaniemi. Why are some tempted to repeat the mistake with Slafkovsky just because he's big? Good question. Very good question. Patrick Laine was drafted 2nd overall the year that Austin Matthews was drafted 1st overall. But he's not Austin Matthews. But when he's on his game, he's pretty good. I don't see what one has to do with the other. I really don't. Take a look at all the other Finns that were drafted elsewhere in the draft. Wasn't Jari Curry drafted in 1980 and he was in the 60s or something? Canadiens drafted Sakko Koivu, turned out to be a pretty good player. A franchise player, no, but a pretty good player. Why don't we end it with this, and we'll have everyone comment sick on YouTube, on Twitter, and on Facebook right now. Marinaro, how about a little bleu blanc rouge for you? Huh? Going out? Bleu blanc rouge. Da-da-da-da-da-da! I'm Marinaro. Tell all your friends about it. Follow us on all social media platforms. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Everyone, give this live stream a thumbs up, says Dan Desjardins. Dan, thumbs up, buddy. It's the Sick Podcast. I'm Marinaro.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by 8.6, Intense by Nature.